We have one more simplifying radical problem to review. So again, we cannot take the square root of 12 or the square root of 5. So we're going to break this up as the square root of 12 over the square root of 5x cubed, and then simplify. So we know the square root of 12 is the same as the square root of 4 times the square root of 3. And let's break the denominator up as the square root of 5 times the square root of x squared times the square root of x. So the numerator will simplify to 2 root 3, and the denominator will simplify to x square root 5x. So again, we are not done because of the 5x that is still in the denominator. So we need to multiply by the square root of 5x over the square root of 5x to rationalize and get the radical out. So the numerator will be 2 square root 15x, and the denominator will be x times 5x. And we can simplify one more step as 2 square root 15x all over 5x squared. Now let's move on to adding and subtracting radicals. So remember, we can add and subtract radicals as long as they have the same last name. So for number 8, we can combine 3 root 3 and negative 8 root 3, and it will become negative 5 root 3. We can't add the 9 root 7 to anybody because he has a different last name, so we just tack him on to the end. And negative 5 root 3 plus 9 root 7 is our final answer. Let's take a look at number 9. Number 9, we have 2 root 5 minus 2 root 36 plus 3 root 5. Nobody has the same last name yet, but maybe we can do some simplifying and get them there. 2 root 5 is as small as he can go. And oh my gosh, look, the square root of 36 is 6. So we have 2 times 6. And then we can simplify the square root of 45 as the square root of 9 times the square root of 5. So we have 2 root 5 minus 2 times 6, which is 12, plus 3 times 3 times the square root of 5. So we have 2 root 5 minus 12 plus 3 times 3 is 9, 9 root 5. And look, we have 2 people with the same last name, so we can add them together. So our final answer is 11 root 5 minus 12. Now let's move on to reviewing multiplying radicals. So we have root 5 minus root 3 inside the parentheses and this root 15 on the outside. So we are going to distribute the root 15 to both terms. Since all the numbers are inside of a radical, we can multiply them together. So 15 times 5 is 60, so we get the square root of 60, minus 15 times 3, which is the square root of 45. So now what we need to do, we're not done yet unfortunately, is try to simplify these two radicals. We just simplified the square root of 45 in the last problem, so we know it's the square root of 9 times the square root of 3. Can you think of two numbers that when multiplied together we get a 60? Hopefully one of those numbers we can take the square root of. If you came up with oops, I'm sorry, I just realized I multiplied wrong. These 5 times 15 is not 60. it is 75. There we go. That's a little bit easier to simplify anyways. All right, sorry for the mistake. So we want to simplify the square root of 75. So can we think of two numbers that when we multiply them together, we get a 75? If you came up with 25 times the square root of 3, you are right. So now let's simplify. The square root of 25 is 5, and the square root of 9 is 3. So we have 5 root 3 minus 3 root 3. And they have the same last name, so our final answer is 2 root 3. Now let's find the product of 2 minus root 3 times 8 plus root 3. So remember that for these types of problems, we need to FOIL. So first we're going to do 2 times 8, which is 16. 2 times root 3, which is 2 root 3. Negative root 3 times 8, which is negative 8 root 3. And then negative root 3 times a positive root 3 will be a negative 3. We have some like terms that we can combine. We have a 2 root 3 minus an 8 root 3, which will give us a negative 6 root 3. And we have a 16 minus 3, which will give us a 13. So our final answer is 13 minus 6 root 3. Last one where we need to find the product. We have 2 root 5 minus 6 quantity squared. So remember, for these types of problems, we need to write it twice and FOIL. So now we have it written twice. Let's start foiling. So first we want to multiply 2 root 5 times 2 root 5. Multiply the regular numbers together. 2 times 2 is 4. And then do root 5 times root 5, which is 5. So 4 times 5 is our first term. Then we want to do 2 root 5 times negative 6, which is negative 12 root 5. And then negative 6 times 2 root 5, which again is negative 12 root 5. And then finally, negative 6 times negative 6 is a positive 36. So let's do some simplifying. 4 times 5 is 20. Negative 12 root 5 minus 12 root 5 is negative 24 root 5. And then we still have that plus 36 in the back. So our final answer is going to be 56 minus 24 root 5. The last topic on the quiz is the material from section 11.3, solving radical equations. So now we're going to review how to solve radical equations and check for extraneous solutions. So for number 13, the first thing we want to do is add 4 to both sides. Remember that we want to get everything away from the square root before we square. Next is to divide by 3. So we have the square root of 2x plus 7 equals 5. Now we are ready to get rid of the square root because everybody else is gone. So let's square both sides. So we have 2x plus 7 equals 25. Now we can subtract 7. And divide by 2. So our final answer is x equals 9. For 14, remember that if you have a square root on both sides of the equal sign, you can square both sides, and that will just give us 7x minus 5 equals 3x plus 19. Now we just want to make sure we get all the x's on one side. So let's subtract 3x, and we have 4x minus 5 equals 19. add 5 to both sides for 4x equals 24. Divide by 4, and x equals 6 is our final answer. For 15, we also want to square both sides. So that gives us 5x minus 6 equals x squared. Because we have an x squared on this side, we have to set everything equal to 0 and factor to find the solution. So we're going to subtract 5x and add 6. So we get 0 equals x squared minus 5x plus 6. Now it's time to factor. So we need to think of two numbers that add to negative 5 but multiply to 6. That would be negative 2 and negative 3. So we get 0 equals x minus 2 times x minus 3. We set both of those equal to 0. So we get two answers. X equals 2 and x equals 3. But we still need to check and see if those answers are extraneous since we got two of them. If I plug a 2 in, I get 10 minus 6, which is 4, and the square root of 4 equals 2. So that's a good solution. Now let's plug in 3. If I plug in 3, I get 15 minus 6, which is 9. The square root of 9 equals 3. So both of these answers are good. None of them are extraneous. Let's move down to number 16. So for number 16, we first want to add the 60 to the other side. So we have 5 square root x equals 60. We want to get rid of that 5 before we square it. So we end up with the square root of x equals 12. After we square both sides, we get the final answer, x equals 144. For some reason, number 17 ended all the way down here, so I'm sorry about that. This is our last problem to review. So, again, we want to square both sides. So we get x squared equals 2x plus 24. This is another one where we need to get everybody onto one side and then factor. So we'll subtract 2x and subtract 24 to get x squared minus 2x minus 24 equals 0. So now let's do the big X and find two numbers that multiply to negative 2, that add to negative 2 and multiply to negative 24. So I think negative 6 and 4 will work. It does. So we get x minus 6, x plus 4, set each equal to 0, and solve. We end up with x equals 6 and x equals negative 4. Are any of these solutions extraneous? If you said that negative 4 is extraneous, then you are right. X equals 6 is the final answer. The reason that negative 4 is extraneous is if I plug it in, I get negative 4 equals 2 times negative 4 plus 24. And remember, we cannot take the square root and just get a negative as an answer. So, x equals 6 is the correct answer.